for the Blogy, the YouTube channel. You'll see all of Nick's stuff there where he does the film study of Penn State. Fantastic stuff. You got to go there, got to subscribe. We're fortunate enough to have Coach on with us today to talk about his latest video, which was really interesting because it highlighted the advancement and improvements from Nick Singleton through the season last year.
Singleton came from an option offense in high school, right? And so I know he's the National Gatorade Player of the Year, which, you know, athletically speaking, it's obvious. But, you know, for a guy like that in the option offense, there's not a lot of patient reading. When you go and you move into a zone spread style offense, you know, where you have to be a little more patient, it was definitely, I think it was eye-opening for him. I think about week 5 is when he kind of started to pick it up a little bit. But, you know, for the most part, man, when you're that talented in high school, you'd be amazed. You can get away with just about anything. For a kid like that, it's hard when all you did was run toss and get the ball pitched to you in high school. It's hard to learn how to read those blocks.
Well, let's talk about that part of it. And I love you have this saying, slow to the hole, fast through the hole. And that slow to the hole means you've got to read the block. You've got to read the defender. Let's talk about that. How is that taught that there's a key player on defense that the running back has to read?
Yeah, so when you look at a run play, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a counter, buck sweep, power. You hear all kinds of things. The running back has a read. He's just not hitting a hole. He's reading something, somebody, you know. And most of the plays that you see them run, they're running some inside zone. They're running some mid zone. They don't really run a bunch of outside stuff. So really, he's really looking at certain and specific D linemen and gaps. And, you know, some people teach it differently. But for the most part, I think they're basically reading that A gap player on those inside zone plays. And so, you know, he has to set that block up with his shoulders. He's got to set that block up with his path. And these are the things as a running back you learn that make you great. You know, I hate to say this, but someone like Ezekiel Elliott, please don't get mad at me, Penn State fans. The one thing that made him great, he really wasn't a phenomenal athlete. You know, but what made him great, especially early in the league, was he knew how to set blocks up. Right, he knew how to. He took his path and he ran and he set that linebacker up and then put his foot in the ground and goes. Right, so when they talk about slow too, it's you're trying to get what you want in front of you, and then when you get to what you want, it's 100 miles an hour through it because you have made your mind up. And so for a guy like Nick, for a guy like Singleton, it's I have to learn how to set up what I want because I'm so athletic. If I get what I want, I'm gone.
I think that patience, it's such a key word. How do you teach that? Because we saw plays early on where he cut back against the grain, ends up with a big gain against athletes that weren't comparable to him. But as your film progresses, we start to see he's waiting now to read the defender. When you're coaching him at practice, how does that get created? How do you do that as a coach?
You know, I'll be honest with you. I think there's lots of ways, and I think it all depends on who you are as a player and as a coach. You know, so my running back coach played in Maryland. His dad is actually David Meggett, and so what he does is we kind of forced the idea because we run a very similar offense, and he and I've kind of learned in it. They hold fingers up at the read, so it forces that running back when he gets the handoff that he has to stare at that read because he's got 3. 2, he has to sound out and vocalize what he visually sees, which forces him to keep staring at it. You're kind of ingraining that behavior. You can't necessarily tell a kid to slow down. But what you can do is you can explain to a kid, this is important, you got to read this. And if they see what that read is, they naturally slow down.
What I found interesting is, you know, this key word again, patience. You're reading maybe that key, the defender, but it's also about reading the guys on your own side, the blocker, especially when they're pulling. Mm-hmm. You have to read them, right?
Yeah. It goes back to setting things up, right? It doesn't matter what the play is. It's slow to fast through. Because let's say there's one play he runs and they run a buck sweep where they pin the edge and they get 2 guys out, one kicks, one wraps around. And he does a great job of getting on the edge in that third level, you know, that DB level. And he starts running outside real fast. He slows down. He bends it. He hits it back in. It turns the defensive back inside, and then he pits it right back out. And what he did was he set up that lineman for him. He set that kid up to success, and that sprung him for another 20 yards. It's about understanding, what am I looking at? You know, what am I setting up? Why do I want to do this? And I think as the year progressed, I mean, I've really, really enjoyed watching what he did, his progression, how he started to learn, like, oh, these guys can do the work for me. You know, they talk about he's a natural runner. Like, those are things that, like, especially in open space, I can kind of teach it off the handoff. But in open space, when I'm running full speed, to see a kid be able to set things up, that shows me that that kid has a natural, innate ability to be successful in the fly. And that's what I think is going to make him so special